Long Beach Harbor, the summer of 1974. A colossal vessel rests on the water, a mirage of industrial ambition shimmering in the California heat. To the world, she is the Hughes Glomar Explorer, a marvel of engineering, a ship built for the future. Her purpose, they say, is to plumb the abyssal plains of the Pacific, harvesting precious manganese nodules from the ocean floor. A testament to the vision of the reclusive billionaire Howard Hughes, her scale is staggering. A hull stretching 619 feet, a derrick tower reaching 253 feet into the sky, and, at its heart, a vast, hidden chamber, a moon pool designed to lower machinery into the crushing darkness miles below. The cost alone, over $350 million, spoke of a venture of unprecedented scope, a gamble on an unproven industry. But this was a lie, a magnificent, meticulously crafted lie. The Hughes Glomar Explorer was not a mining ship. It was a masquerade. Its true purpose was an act of audacious necromancy, to raise a ghost from the ocean floor. It was a tool of espionage built for a single clandestine mission: to descend 3 miles into the Pacific abyss and retrieve the wreck of a sunken Soviet submarine. The prize was not manganese. It was the atomic secrets of a rival superpower. Nuclear missiles, cryptographic machines, and top-secret code books, all entombed in a steel coffin on the seabed. The operation, codenamed Project Azorian, would become one of the most audacious and elaborate deceptions of the entire Cold War. The story begins not in the boardrooms of the CIA, but in the frozen waters off the Kamchatka Peninsula. Late February 1968. The Soviet submarine K-129, a Gulf II-class boat, slips from its frozen pen and into the North Pacific. Though aging, she is a formidable weapon, carrying 3 nuclear-tipped ballistic missiles in the launch tubes built into her towering sail. On board, a crew of 98 men, veterans of the silent service, embark on what they believe is a routine deterrent patrol. Then, in the cold, unforgiving days of early March 1968, silence. The K-129 vanishes. No distress call pierced the ether, no emergency beacon broke the surface. The Soviet Navy launched a frantic, sprawling search, but the vastness of the ocean swallowed the submarine whole. It was simply gone. For the Soviets, it was a tragic loss. For American intelligence, it was an opportunity of unimaginable scale. The submarine, a steel tomb resting 16,500 feet down, had become the ultimate prize. And so began the elaborate theater, a conspiracy that drew in a reclusive billionaire and his shadowy business empire to provide the perfect cover for the greatest heist in history. A vessel built to steal secrets from a tomb that had sworn to keep them. In the vast, crushing dark of the Pacific, a ghost vanished. The Soviet submarine K-129, a steel leviathan armed with nuclear fire, simply ceased to exist. For months, Moscow's search fleets crisscrossed the empty waves, a frantic, desperate effort against an ocean that keeps its secrets. They found nothing. The Kremlin eventually concluded the boat was lost, all 98 hands consumed by the deep, the cause and the location a permanent, maddening mystery. But the ocean was not silent. For the United States Navy, the submarine's final moments had been recorded. An invisible network of underwater microphones, a deep-sea nervous system known as the Sound Surveillance System, or SOSUS, had been listening. Spread across the globe, these hydrophones were the West's ear, pressed permanently against the cold, black floor of the world. They had detected the acoustic signature of a catastrophe. A sudden, violent crack, consistent through miles of water. By cross-referencing the signals from multiple listening posts, American analysts drew a ghostly circle on the map, a search box, hundreds of square miles in size. The task of finding a needle in this oceanic haystack fell to a vessel built for the shadows. The USS Halhe Halibut prowled the target zone, deploying a towed, deep-diving camera sled nicknamed the Fish. The mission was a masterpiece of tedium and tension, a blind search in total darkness, painting the abyssal plain one painstaking strip at a time, mile after agonizing mile. Then, in August of 1968, 5 months after the K-129 disappeared, a shape materialized from the gloom. The wreckage. It was a chilling sight. The submarine lay broken on the seabed, its hull fractured. The sail, the vessel's iconic conning tower, had been sheared clean off and rested some distance away. The missile compartment, though heavily damaged, was still there. The bow showed evidence of catastrophic wounds, confirming the theory of a rapid, violent end. For the intelligence agencies in Washington, this was not a tomb. It was a treasure chest, a Soviet ballistic missile submarine delivered to their doorstep. Inside that shattered hull lay the crown jewels of Soviet military technology, its nuclear warheads, its cryptographic machines, its top-secret communication systems, and, most precious of all, potentially, its codebooks and operational orders. The value was incalculable. To recover these materials would be to unlock the deepest secrets of their Cold War adversary. American scientists could reverse engineer Soviet nuclear weapon design. Cryptographers could potentially break the entire Soviet naval code. Engineers could study their submarine construction, identifying fatal vulnerabilities. Strategists could gain a profound insight into Soviet naval doctrine. It was the kind of intelligence windfall that arrives once in a generation. But the prize was locked in the most secure vault on Earth. It rested on the seabed, nearly 16,000 feet below the surface of the waves, under 3 miles of cold, dark water, at a pressure that could pulverize steel into dust. The greatest intelligence prize in history was there for the taking, if only they could figure out how to reach it. 3 miles down, a realm of crushing blackness and eternal silence, where pressure is measured in tons per square inch. Here, 16,500 feet beneath the waves of the Pacific, sat a ghost of the Cold War. A prize beyond measure, and a problem that bordered on science fiction. In the year 1968, the known world of salvage operations ended just below the sunlit surface. The deepest recovery ever managed had reached only a few hundred feet. Commercial diving was a shallow water affair. Even the most advanced research submersibles, the bathyscaphs built to witness the abyss, were delicate scientific instruments. They could descend into the crushing dark, but they could not grasp, could not lift anything more substantial than a few pounds of rock and sediment. The challenge was not merely difficult, it was, by every existing standard, impossible. To raise a 2,000-ton Soviet submarine from the ocean floor was a feat of engineering that belonged to a future not yet written. The world's foremost experts were in agreement. It could not be done. But within the quiet corridors of the Central Intelligence Agency, a different calculation was being made. The potential intelligence windfall, nuclear warheads, cryptographic machines, codebooks, the very architecture of a rival superpower's naval strategy was too great to abandon. The impossible would have to be attempted. The questions were monumental, a cascade of engineering nightmares. Could the submarine's fragile hull survive the journey to the surface? or would it need to be dissected in the abyss? Could a colossal claw be lowered from a ship, a tether stretching 3 miles long? Or would a new kind of submersible titan have to be built for the task? How could any machine generate the immense force required to lift such a weight from such an incredible depth? The calculations were more than daunting. They were a blueprint for a machine that had never existed. But slowly, an answer began to emerge from the schematics and theories. With enough resources, with a bold enough vision, the technology could be invented. The impossible was, perhaps, merely a matter of will and budget. Yet, solving the physics was only the first half of the equation. The operation demanded a massive, custom-built vessel, a floating cathedral of secret technology. This ship would have to linger for months in the open Pacific, directly above the wreck, a stationary beacon in an empty ocean. It would be seen. Soviet spy satellites would chart its position. Their intelligence-gathering trawlers, bristling with antennas, would draw near. And when they realized the Americans were attempting to steal their most sensitive secrets from the seabed, they would not just observe, they would interfere, they would obstruct, or, in a final, desperate act, they would destroy the wreck themselves, ensuring its secrets remained forever in the deep. The mission required more than a ship. It required a story. A cover so convincing, so audacious, that it could explain away the presence of this gargantuan vessel, toiling for months at the precise coordinates where a Soviet submarine lay entombed. The lie had to be bigger, more fantastic than the truth itself. This is where the name Howard Hughes entered the narrative, not the man himself, but the myth. By 1970, Hughes was already a phantom, one of America's most famous and enigmatic figures, the record-setting aviator, the daring film producer, the titan of industry who controlled the sprawling empire of airlines and advanced aircraft manufacturing. But the public figure had long since retreated from the world. The Howard Hughes of the early 1970s was a recluse of almost mythical proportions, living in sealed, blacked-out hotel suites, his vast business empire managed by a small circle of trusted aides who rarely saw him. He had become a ghost in his own life. And that made him perfect. His eccentricity was the ultimate camouflage. The CIA's plan needed a cover story rooted in grand ambition and borderline madness, a project so expensive and speculative that only one man on Earth would conceivably attempt it: the mining of precious manganese nodules from the deep ocean floor. An idea decades ahead of its time, a billionaire's folly, a perfect fiction. The man who had vanished from the world was about to become the public face of its most audacious secret operation. His very absence, his reputation for obsessive secrecy and grandiose projects, provided the perfect shield. One impossible object buried in the crushing dark of the abyss, and one impossible man hidden away in the plain sight of fame. In the crushing blackness of the abyssal plain, miles beneath the Pacific waves, the ocean floor is littered with a strange kind of treasure. Potato-sized mineral formations, slowly grown over millions of years. They are called manganese nodules, and they hold the promise of a new industrial age, rich with nickel, copper, and cobalt. For decades, the idea of harvesting this deep-sea bounty was a dream, a science fiction fantasy waiting for technology to catch up, a challenge for a titan. And then, a titan appeared to answer the call: Howard Hughes. The billionaire aviator, the Hollywood mogul, the engineering visionary who had retreated from the world into a fortress of silence and eccentricity. Suddenly, his organization announced its most ambitious project yet: the construction of a revolutionary vessel to mine the ocean floor. The world saw a reclusive genius making one last grand play. It was a story so perfectly in character, so audacious, it had to be true. But the ship was a lie. The mining was a fiction. The entire enterprise was a masterful piece of theater, scripted and funded not by Howard Hughes, but by the Central Intelligence Agency. The agency needed a cover so vast, so expensive, so public, that it would hide in plain sight. They needed a story that could explain the presence of a massive, technologically advanced ship lingering for months in a single patch of the remote Pacific. The story of a deep-sea mining venture was the perfect illusion. The arrangement was a ghost's pact. The CIA would finance every bolt, every blueprint, every salary, funneling millions through a complex web of shell corporations designed to dissolve into the labyrinth of the Hughes business empire. Hughes himself provided the most crucial element: his name. His reputation for impossible projects made the unbelievable plausible, and his legendary seclusion was not a liability. It was an asset. It ensured he would make no public appearances, give no interviews, and ask no questions that might unravel the carefully woven narrative. He was the perfect, silent partner, his company a shield against scrutiny, his legend a cloak for the spies. There was another, darker layer to this alliance, a quality that made the Hughes organization uniquely suited for the world of espionage: its deep and tangled roots in Las Vegas. Hughes's casino operations had brought his empire into the orbit of organized crime, into a world that ran on its own codes of silence and secrecy. This was a business accustomed to moving vast sums of money in ways that defied tracing. It understood how to operate in the shadows, how to build walls between its various enterprises, how to keep secrets buried deep. For the CIA, this existing culture of opacity was invaluable. The agency was not partnering with mobsters. It was leveraging a corporate machine that had a later layer of plausible deniability. If any curious journalist or foreign agent began to notice strange financial flows or suspicious activities, the explanation was ready-made. It could be dismissed as the murky, unorthodox business of Las Vegas casinos, a world everyone already assumed was corrupt. The shadow of the mob provided the perfect camouflage for the work of the state. The ultimate cover story was not just the ship, but the reputation of the man and the underworld his empire touched. It was a deception built upon a deception, a secret hidden within a scandal. In the shadow war of the 1970s, the greatest secrets were not kept in fortified vaults, but buried under miles of crushing, silent water. To retrieve one of them, the Central Intelligence Agency would not build a weapon. It would build a lie. A magnificent, sprawling, and impossibly expensive lie, forged from steel and broadcast to the world. The plan required a phantom, a name so powerful, so eccentric, that the most audacious project, Corporation, was born. A front company presented to the world as another tentacle of the Hughes empire, embarking on a bold new venture: the deep-sea mining project. Contracts were signed, steel was cut. In 1971, at Sun Shipbuilding in Pennsylvania, a vessel, Bemerschel Engineering, a ship designed to harvest precious manganese nodules from the abyssal plains of the ocean floor. Every feature of its design was a masterstroke of misdirection. Its colossal derrick, towering over the deck, and its vast moon pool, a gaping maw in the center of the hull, were perfectly logical for lowering mining equipment to extreme depths. The ship's revolutionary dynamic positioning system, capable of holding it perfectly stationary over a single point in a churning sea, was explained away as a necessity for precise mining operations. And the centerpiece, An enormous, powerful claw mechanism was simply described as the tool for scooping treasure from the seabed. Every question had a plausible answer. Every rivet was part of the alibi. For 3 years, the illusion was painstakingly constructed at a cost that began to defy belief. The ship alone consumed over $350 million. When the full scope of the program was tallied, the price tag swelled past $800 million, cementing its place as one of the most expensive intelligence operations in history. Hidden within its design was technology born not of commerce, but of espionage. A capture vehicle, nicknamed Clementine, was the true heart of the machine. It was designed to descend into the blackness, to position itself over the shattered hull of a Soviet submarine, and to grip it with immense mechanical arms, beginning a slow, secret ascent from a watery grave. While the ship was being built, the CIA's operatives were building the narrative. Summa Corporation announced its deep-sea venture with a flourish. Trade publications ran glowing articles about the ambitious project. Legitimate mining industry experts were consulted, their credibility borrowed to lend the story an unassailable technical sheen. The company even conducted a few genuine small-scale mining operations, creating a public track record of their supposed business. It was a cover story built layer by layer, a fortress of fiction designed to withstand casual scrutiny. The hope was that no one would look too closely, that no one would question why a commercial mining venture required capabilities and a budget that dwarfed the efforts of entire nations. By the summer of 1974, the performance was ready to begin. The Hughes Glomar Explorer slipped its moorings in Long Beach, California, sailing west into the Pacific, ostensibly towards its first rich mining field. On board, a strange and silent hierarchy prevailed. The crew was a mix of CIA personnel, Navy specialists, civilian contractors, and employees of the Hughes organization. Most of them were simply doing a job, entirely unaware of the true nature of their voyage. Only a small, core group knew the truth. They were not there to mine manganese nodules. They were there to steal a submarine from the bottom of the world. The ship sailed for weeks, finally reaching a desolate patch of ocean northwest of Hawaii. There, its sophisticated navigation systems locked onto a set of coordinates known to only a handful of men on the planet. The engines shifted, the dynamic positioning system engaged, and the great ship became motionless over the wreck site. The illusion of being a mining vessel dissolved in the vast emptiness of the Pacific. Its true purpose was about to be realized, 3 miles beneath the waves. Beneath the placid surface of the Pacific, a secret war was being waged in absolute silence. An operation of unprecedented scale, unfolding entirely out of sight, deep within the crushing blackness of the abyssal plain. Its instrument was a machine named Clementine, a colossal capture vehicle engineered for a single, audacious purpose. It was not launched, but lowered. Submerged through the moon pool of the ship above, a gaping hole in the hull that opened directly to the sea, it began its descent. The journey downward was a slow, deliberate pilgrimage into a realm of crushing pressure and eternal night. 3 miles of water, a distance so vast it defies easy comprehension. Clementine, tethered to the surface by a massive, miles-long pipe string, sank through the water column for hours upon agonizing hours. A silent fall into an abyss where sunlight has never reached. Its destination? The tomb of a Soviet submarine. But the ocean floor was not a pristine resting place. The wreck was a debris field, a ghost scattered across the abyssal plain. The submarine had not sunk intact. It had been torn apart, mentine, a machine the size of a building, with surgical precision over the target. In the humming control rooms of the Glomar Explorer, Operators stared into the ghostly green glow of monitors. Their only eyes were the cameras on Clementine, cutting feeble paths through the silt-filled darkness. They were flying blind, piloting a machine thousands of feet below by remote control. Every command, every adjustment of a joystick was a conversation across an impossible distance, plagued by time lag. A simple instruction took precious seconds to travel down the steel umbilical, and the grainy, distorted video feed took just as long to return. They were trying to judge distance and orientation from flickering, two-dimensional images, maneuvering a mechanical titan around a fragile, broken prize. After days of this painstaking, nerve-shredding dance, Clementine was finally in position over a major section of the lost submarine. The moment of truth had arrived. The great mechanical arms, the jaws of the machine, began to close. Their task was a paradox of engineering: to grip the hull with enough force to lift thousands of tons, yet with a touch delicate enough to prevent the wreck from shattering. This was the operation's gravest risk. For 6 years, the submarine had been consumed by the sea. Salt water had corroded its steel skin, weakening a structure already compromised by the cataclysm that sent it to the bottom. The immense forces of the lift could be its final undoing. One wrong move, one tremor of excessive pressure, and the hull could disintegrate. The priceless intelligence locked inside, codebooks, technology, nuclear warheads, would be lost forever, scattered across the seafloor, or simply turning to dust as it rose. In early August of 1974, the ascent began. Slowly, carefully. The pipe string, a steel spine connecting two worlds, began to pull the colossal payload upward. Inch by agonizing inch, Clementine and its captive prize began their long journey back to the light. On board the Glomar Explorer, engineers monitored a constellation of data: stress on the claws, vibrations running up the pipe, the faintest signs of structural failure. The ascent was deliberately, maddeningly slow, a strategy to minimize the strain on the fragile wreck. For days, the shadow rose through the Pacific depths. Then, halfway home, disaster struck. At a depth of approximately 8,000 feet, a catastrophic failure. A sound that no one heard, but that everyone felt, a violent shudder running the length of the steel string. The mechanical arms, unable to sustain the colossal weight and the dynamic forces of the deep ocean, broke. A scream of tortured metal, and a vast portion of the submarine section tore away. On the monitors, the operators could only watch, helpless. The prize, the culmination of months of work and hundreds of millions of dollars, was gone. It tumbled back into the eternal night, disappearing from the camera's view, returning to the crushing silence of the ocean floor. All that remained in Clementine's grip was the forward section, perhaps 1/3 of the hull they had so carefully lifted. In the sterile quiet of the control room, a decision had to be made, and it had to be made instantly. Abandon the mission, accept total failure, or continue the lift with the fragment that remained. They chose to continue, to bring the forward section the rest of the way home. A piece of a ghost, a shattered trophy from a war fought in the dark, pulled from an abyss that almost refused to give it up. Slowly, painstakingly, a ghost rises from the abyss. 2/3 of the way to the surface, a fractured piece of a Soviet submarine is drawn from the crushing blackness of the Pacific. It ascends not into the open air, but into a secret chamber hidden within the hull of the Glomar Explorer, a cavern of steel and shadow known as the Moon Pool, designed to swallow evidence whole, far from the prying eyes of satellites or rival navies. Once the mangled section was secured, the ship turned for home. A phantom departing a graveyard 3 miles deep. On paper, it was a technical miracle, a feat of engineering that had never been attempted. Yet the mood aboard was not one of pure triumph. The victory was hollowed by a catastrophic failure. The prize they had captured was only a fragment of what they had reached for. What exactly was wrested from submarine K-129 remained one of the Cold War's most tightly guarded secrets for decades. Even today, the full picture is obscured by redacted documents and official silence. The CIA would eventually acknowledge the basics: the forward torpedo tubes, a crew compartment, the silent machinery of a sunken warship. And something more: the bodies of 6 Soviet sailors, their long, silent watch finally over. In a gesture of profound, almost surreal respect, these men were given a formal burial at sea. The flag of their sworn enemy was draped over their remains, and the ceremony was filmed, a quiet, solemn ritual of military honors exchanged between 2 superpowers locked in a global struggle. A message in a bottle, intended for the Kremlin, proving that even in the depths of espionage, there are lines of decency. But what of the true treasures? The nuclear warheads, the cryptographic machines, the codebooks that held the keys to the Soviet Union's naval communications. These were the real targets, the intelligence that could tip the balance of power. Most of these assets were almost certainly housed in the sail or the aft sections of the submarine, the very sections that tore away when the mechanical claws failed, plunging back into the crushing dark. The grand prize had slipped through their fingers. For nearly a year, the operation remained the perfect secret, a ghost story whispered only in the highest echelons of power. Then, in February of 1975, the silence was broken. Investigative journalist Jack Anderson published the story. The details were muddled. He mistakenly called the mission Project Jennifer, a name for a different part of the program, instead of its true designation, Azorian. But the core truth was out. The CIA's response became legendary. They neither confirmed nor denied the report. This calculated ambiguity, a wall of official silence, would become a textbook tactic known as the Glomar response. It was a way of saying everything and nothing at all. The Soviet Union's reaction was a study in strategic restraint. They issued protests, decrying the act as theft, a violation of a sovereign vessel. But the protests lacked fire. The Kremlin was paralyzed by a terrible uncertainty. What did the Americans now know? Did they have their missile launch codes? Had their most vital secrets been compromised? To protest too loudly would be to reveal their own ignorance, to expose a critical gap in their own intelligence. Their silence was more telling than any threat. For the CIA, the exposure was a death blow to their grand ambition. A second mission was already planned. The Glomar Explorer was to return to the site, to retrieve the pieces that had fallen away, to finish the job. But with the world now watching, that became impossible. Soviet spy ships would shadow their every move. The window of opportunity had slammed shut. The operation was over. It had proven that the impossible was technically achievable, but it had failed to deliver the crown jewels. The Hughes Glomar Explorer, the magnificent vessel built for this one singular purpose, could no longer sustain its disguise. The fiction that it was a deep-sea mining ship, bankrolled by the eccentric billionaire Howard Hughes, evaporated overnight. The elaborate cover story, so convincing in its sheer scale and expense, collapsed under the weight of the truth. In retrospect, the flaws were always there. The astronomical cost seemed wildly disproportionate for any plausible commercial return. It was a bluff so audacious, so expensive, it had almost worked. The ship itself became a relic, a monument to a secret that could no longer be kept. Stripped of its purpose, It was transferred to government ownership, mothballed, and eventually sold. A titan of the secret world, put out to pasture. The story of Project Azorian is one of breathtaking ambition and agonizing failure, a testament to a time when nations would move mountains and oceans to gain an edge. And deep on the Pacific floor, the rest of K-129 still lies in the cold and the dark, keeping the very secrets the Glomar Explorer was built to uncover. On the vast, empty canvas of the Pacific Ocean, a vessel appeared that made no sense. The Glomar Explorer. Its official purpose was deep-sea mining, a plausible, even noble pursuit of manganese nodules from the ocean floor. But to any seasoned maritime engineer, the ship was a paradox. Its technical capabilities, its sheer scale, its staggering operational cost, they were wildly disproportionate to the humble profits of seabed mining. This was a lie made of steel, a floating piece of theater designed for an audience of one: Soviet intelligence. To conceal a secret of this magnitude required a shadow of equal proportion. It required an empire built on opacity, a name that invited speculation but defied scrutiny. It required Howard Hughes. By the 1970s, Hughes was more myth than man, a phantom haunting the penthouse of his Las Vegas hotels. His involvement was the masterstroke of plausible deniability. The man himself remained a ghost, a name whispered in boardrooms, while his executives brokered the deal with the Central Intelligence Agency. His sprawling corporate structure, a labyrinth of shell companies and unorthodox ventures already entangled with the murky world of Las Vegas casinos, was the perfect host for a government parasite of this size. An intelligence operation funded by hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars could simply vanish inside the existing chaos of the Hughes empire, its budget lines indistinguishable from the eccentric billionaire's other fantastical projects. The technical achievement at the heart of this deception was breathtaking. Project Azorian was not merely a salvage operation. It was a quiet declaration of technological supremacy. It was proof that a nation could reach 3 miles into the crushing blackness of the abyss and retrieve the secrets of its enemy. The engineering defied the known limits of the era, a dynamic positioning system that could hold a 600-foot ship perfectly stationary over a single point in the deep ocean, battling winds and currents. A pipe string, assembled piece by piece, not for drilling, but to lower a colossal claw, a surgical instrument the size of a building, into a realm of eternal night. What it found there was the tomb of the K-129, a Soviet Golf II-class submarine that had vanished without a trace 6 years earlier. The prize was immense. Nuclear-tipped torpedoes, codebooks, sonar technology, a direct look into the heart of the Soviet nuclear triad. The lift began, a slow, agonizing ascent from the depths. But the abyss does not surrender its dead easily. Somewhere on the journey to the surface, a catastrophic failure occurred. The giant claw, the very centerpiece of the machine, suffered a mechanical breakdown. A portion of the fragile, corroded submarine hull fractured and broke away, spiraling back down into the darkness from which it came, taking with it many of the mission's most coveted secrets. The intelligence value of what remained has been a closely guarded secret ever since. For decades, the Central Intelligence Agency has insisted the operation was a success, a worthwhile venture despite its crippling failure mid-ascent. The recovered forward section of the submarine must have yielded a treasure of its own, a fractured glimpse into Soviet naval construction, the architecture of their command centers, and, perhaps, documents or equipment that survived the saltwater grave. But was this fragmented prize worth the colossal price tag, an expense that in today's money would approach several $billions? The answer remains locked away in classified archives. Beyond the secrets, the operation walked a razor's edge of international law. This was not derelict cargo. This was a sovereign vessel, a piece of the Soviet Union lying on the ocean floor. To Moscow, its recovery was not salvage. It was an act of grave robbery, of state-sponsored piracy. To Washington, it was the legitimate recovery of abandoned military hardware from the lawless frontier of the abyssal plain. A silent, undeclared conflict waged in the crushing depths, far from the eyes of the world. The legacy of Project Azorian was not just a piece of a Soviet submarine. It was the proof that the impossible could be engineered. The technologies invented in secret for this one mission, from deep-water robotics to precision heavy lifting systems, rippled outwards, advancing both military and commercial exploration of the deep sea for decades to come. The ship, built to tell a lie, had returned to the surface, its silence a testament to one of the most audacious secrets ever pulled from the depths. In the silent aftermath, a war of whispers began. On the surface, the arguments were deceptively simple. One side claimed the sanctity of international waters, a tomb that should remain undisturbed. The other invoked the ancient laws of the sea, the right of salvage, the claim of finder over the lost. But these arguments were never destined for a courtroom. They were phantoms, traded in classified memos and back-channel threats. To litigate would mean to reveal, and in this game, revelation was a loss for everyone. The secrets of the deep were to remain secrets of the state. The true battle was fought not over law, but over the very definition of what was possible. And what was possible came at a staggering price. $800 million, a sum so vast it could have funded entire fleets of conventional weapons, or a generation of spies. The question echoed through the corridors of Langley and the halls of the Pentagon. What is a secret worth? When the prize is the very heart of your adversary's nuclear deterrent, does the cost even matter? The mixed results of Project Azorian ignited a fierce internal debate. A debate about the line between audacious ambition and reckless expenditure, one that would shape the future of intelligence for decades. The most valuable pieces of the puzzle, the nuclear codes and missile systems, were lost in the final agonizing moments of the ascent. They slipped back into the abyss, leaving a void in the intelligence gathered and a gaping hole in the budget. For the families of the 98 men aboard the K-129, the operation offered a strange and bitter form of closure. 6 Soviet sailors, their bodies gently lifted from the crushing darkness, were given a final, solemn farewell. On the deck of the Glomar Explorer, a ship built on a foundation of lies, a moment of profound truth unfolded. The American crew, their clandestine mission paused, stood as an honor guard. They wrapped the fallen in the Soviet naval ensign and, to the haunting melody of the Soviet national anthem, committed them back to the sea. This entire ceremony was captured on film, a quiet, ghostly piece of footage later delivered to the Russians. Was it a gesture of respect, a message of shared humanity between professional adversaries? Or was it something else, a subtle boast, a chilling demonstration of capability, a way of saying, "We were there. We touched your dead. We can reach you anywhere." For the families of the 92 men left behind, their loved ones' graves had been violated, their eternal rest disturbed by a foreign power hunting for secrets. From these murky depths of espionage and grief, a legend was born. The story of Project Azorian became something more than a classified operation. It became modern mythology. History rarely offers such a perfect cocktail of intrigue, A reclusive billionaire, Howard Hughes, playing the part of an eccentric deep-sea miner. The Central Intelligence Agency, masters of shadow warfare, orchestrating the grand deception. And the audacious goal itself, to steal a submarine from the bottom of the world. Its partial failure did not diminish the legend. It cemented it. A perfect success is a clinical report, filed away and forgotten. But a grand, near-perfect failure? That is the stuff of story. It serves as a stark reminder that in the face of the ocean's immense power, the most sophisticated plans and the most advanced technology are fragile. A single metal claw, failing at the critical moment, can change the course of history. The ghost of Azorian would surface again. Its influence did not end with the Cold War. The technologies forged in secrecy for this impossible task created a new field of human endeavor. When the Space Shuttle Challenger was torn from the sky in 1986 and its wreckage scattered across the Atlantic floor, the engineers who knew how to probe the deep were called upon. The lessons learned from the Glomar Explorer guided the recovery, helping a grieving nation find answers in the dark. The world's navies took note. The abyss was no longer a sanctuary. It was a stage, a potential battlefield accessible to those with the will and the technology. And the ship itself, the Hughes Glomar Explorer, found a second life. The great spy ship, its secrets retired, was stripped of its clandestine machinery and put to work in the petroleum industry, drilling for oil. A machine designed to plunder a rival's secrets was now plundering the Earth's. One operation, born in the shadows, reached out to change our world. It redefined the limits of espionage, sparked a technological revolution in deep-sea exploration, and left a legacy etched in both myth and metal. It began with the belief that a secret lay buried, safe beneath 3 miles of water. It ended by proving that in the modern world, no secret is safe. No depth is too great. The silence of the ocean had been broken, and it would never be the same. For years, the Glomar Explorer sailed the world's oceans, a vessel living a profound double life. To the world, it was a pioneering deep-sea drilling ship, a marvel of commercial engineering. In the shadows, it was a purpose-built instrument of espionage, finally doing something resembling the audacious cover story for which it was secretly born. Project Azorian stands as a monument to a spectacular paradox. It was an engineering feat that defied physics, a mission to reach 3 miles into the crushing abyss and grasp a fallen enemy. A giant mechanical claw descending through perpetual darkness to close around a Soviet submarine. Yet, in the final agonizing moments of its ascent, the prize fractured. The most vital sections, the code room, the nuclear warheads, the core of the intelligence sought, broke away, tumbling back into the silent depths. A breathtaking triumph of technology, forever shadowed by a failure of intelligence. But the operation left behind more than a fragmented wreck on the ocean floor. It forged a new weapon in the arsenal of state secrecy. A legal doctrine that echoes to this day, the Glomar response. When confronted with requests for information, the Central Intelligence Agency could now issue a chillingly simple reply. It can neither confirm nor deny the existence of the records. A wall of official ambiguity born from this mission that continues to shape the very architecture of government transparency. The mission's existence was cloaked in the myth of one of America's most enigmatic figures, Howard Hughes. His vast, labyrinthine business empire, with its legitimate ventures and shadowy connections, provided the perfect smokescreen. A reclusive billionaire hunting for manganese nodules at the bottom of the sea. The truth was far stranger, a partnership that revealed an agency willing to operate in the gray spaces, far beyond conventional methods when the stakes were high enough. And so, The K-129 remains where it fell in 1968, a steel tomb for 98 souls resting in eternal darkness. Most of its hull and the secrets it was meant to yield are still there. An artifact of a silent war, a testament to an operation that reached for the impossible, and a permanent reminder that some secrets, once swallowed by the ocean, refuse to be brought into the light.